So you've directed some very tense films and even some grittier films like Apollo 13, 13 Lives and The Missing, but this definitely feels a bit darker in tone for you.
Yes.
And, was this an intentional shift at this point in your career, and what drew you to the story of Floreana?
Well, not intentional, but my attraction to the story just would not go away, and I kept thinking about it, working on it, sort of developing my version, because it's a mystery, it's an unsolved murder, and yet you read the different accounts and think about it, and there's sort of only a handful of outcomes that really could have been. And we, Noah Pink and I, chose this one ultimately. But I always recognized how outrageous the characters were, in the real story, and therefore how sort of outrageous they would need to be in the movie. And that appealed to me. I wasn't sure about audiences, but quite frankly, as shows like Survivor, or White Lotus, or Fargo, or Succession started to prove over and over again, or movies like The Favorite, that this balance between sort of this kind of big behavior that could be funny, and that the audience would sort of roll with those swings and understand it. And of course, in this case, the more you can convince audiences that this, especially the Baroness and Rita, this almost campy, huge behavior, that's who they were. In fact, we probably dialed it back based on the research that we did. And so it became very intriguing to me because, sure, I did recognize that while I love ensemble stories and I love character-driven stories, it's very morally ambiguous and gray in a lot of ways. You're supposed to have a kind of empathy for all of the characters, I hope, and yet you begin to be repelled by some of the choices that they're making, and that's all well and good. This is all much grayer than a territory that I'm used to inhabiting, and as a director, and yeah, I did find that one of the big inducements. Like I really wanted to try. But the other thing is, I'm sorry, I'm dragging this answer out. It stayed with me. It spoke to me, And when I would talk to others about it, they would have a similar sort of reaction, because while it happened all those years ago, it still says a lot about human nature and society today, and some of the pressures that they were trying to leave behind, the reasons they were trying to go off the grid. You type in "go off the grid" today, it's one of the most visited sites for a reason. And so, again, I felt more and more compelled. And as Noah wrote, when he finished the script and I started sharing it, people were just confirming that. It wasn't just the actors who were willing to sign on, but it was Hans Zimmer, it was others who were never going to have anything to do with the project, just saying, you got to do this, you got to tell this story. And so I'm really happy that I did. And thank you all for showing up here on a morning.